Do I need to approve this?
You might. Did you click it?
I just did. I was reading it.
Okay.
Make sure I know what I was agreeing to.
Okay. I'm going to cut that out because I think it just recorded us saying all that.
Of course it did.
So I want to welcome to the show my friend and coach, big brother, and owner of CrossFit Catonsville, Chris Franey. Hello.
Hi, Julie.
How
Thanks
you
for
doing?
having me.
You been coaching all morning.
I have since 5 a.m.
You got that coach's voice.
The coach's voice.
That's okay. That's
So
how we know
hopefully,
you're working hard.
yeah, I'm yelling hard. That's about it.
So, for people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. I don't think I actually know. How did you get into CrossFit and then into coaching?
Um, there's a long version that involves like different people I knew via acquaintances that eventually got me connected to Gio and Brian, who opened CrossFit Fed Hill. And the short version is I was interested in getting into CrossFit after doing my Ironman
Mhm.
in 2010 or 11. And they were on the way, CrossFit Fed Hill was on the way to my office. So it worked out as far as like my daily commute and stuff. So when they were opening up, I was one of the first ones to sign up.
What was
So
your first workout? You
I have
remember?
no idea. I don't record any of that stuff. I do. It's all in the system somewhere in Wodify, but I don't remember the workout per se as much as I remember the space, and I remember them coaching because it was like their new space. And Gio had done a gym in California for a few years before moving back, so he kind of had a little bit of a role with it. But you could tell, like, Brian and some of the other coaches still being a little bit, I don't want to say green, but just there's always nerves when you're a new coach. There's always nerves, and I don't think I recognized them then, but I can look back on it and kind of see it now. But yeah, I started. So I want to say that was in 2011. I started my CrossFit venture and grew with them and learned from Gio, and eventually around, I think it was 2012, I took my level 1. He was having level 1s at the gym, so it worked out really easily. It was right there. I was able to sign up. I felt like it was a comfortable place to do it too, since it was my home gym. I felt a little more comfortable going through that process. But did my level 1 there and passed it. And then after making a few friends at CrossFit Fed Hill and passing it, ended up agreeing to go coach um, at Brian and Marina's gym, The Cove, because they were at that time still at Fed Hill. And neither one of us knew. I didn't know that they were looking to open up a gym. They didn't know that I was getting my level 1. But when it all kind of came together, it made sense. I felt more comfortable going to a new gym to start my coaching career as opposed to trying to become a coach at my home gym that I had already been, that I had learned from, and I guess had set these relationships with other people out of the gate as like a noob who was learning the sport with them right alongside them. I've always find it very hard, and I tell our coaches now, like it's really tough to be an athlete in a box and become a coach in that same box.
Mm-hmm.
And not so much because I think being a coach is hard, but I just think it's really hard to differentiate yourself from that friend slash sidekick in the workouts to, okay, I am now teaching you and you're coach and somebody you need to listen to. So that was something I kind of sidestepped when I ended up going to Cove, because it was brand new. Nobody knew me.
Well, I was fortunate because that's where we met.
That is. I was there for about 4 years. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I spent a lot of time coaching. I got a lot of experience out of that whole experience. I mean, many, many hours being able to hone the skill and just the comfort. Funny enough, and I don't know if you know, I mean, I grew up a shy kid. I was terrified to speak to groups in public, any of that kind of stuff. And
That
then eventually I, through different jobs and moving overseas and then moving back for work, just kind of eventually just told myself that, nobody knows who you are. You can be whoever you want to be. And then I would try to pick things that I knew intimidated me, and I would aggressively try to tackle it. So
that's interesting.
I think CrossFit was one of those things. Like
Yeah.
I've grown up, I grew up a swimmer. I was in track and field, in the cycling. That naturally all morphed into triathlons. But none of that stuff was, I didn't know how to deadlift till not even the first day. I didn't know how to deadlift till getting into CrossFit. I didn't know anything about a barbell. I'd never spent really any time in a weight room, and the times I did spend, I was young. I was in middle school, high school, swimming for a club team. And we would go at like 4 a.m. to a weight room, and the coach would drink his coffee and read a newspaper, and we'd all just do dumb stuff. Nothing was proper. Nothing had technique. Nothing, was safe, but we just did it. But yeah, so I think CrossFit scared me a little bit. And so it was like, all right, I'm jumping in. And, and then with anything, I like to learn as much as possible. I don't like, this is from my work history and then coaching backgrounds of like being I was a swim coach at one point, but it's like, I have to know and learn as much of it as possible to feel comfortable to coach it. I have to do it. I have to work in it, or I have to be in it before I feel comfortable telling somebody else how to do it. So.
Yeah, I think that's what we have in common. We're both a little bit nerdy about that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love it. It's funny. You don't appreciate education until you get older. And like, you actually, I guess part of it is too, we have a choice. We can pick what we want to educate ourselves on now.
Right.
So that's why it tends to be a little more fun. And I gravitate more towards certain topics because it's my choice versus, going to school and being told what you had to study. I was never a big fan of school, but, comes around. Now I spend all my time listening to books and, researching, fun facts on the internet about lifting or, health sciences and all kind of stuff. And it's weird. It's completely different than anything I thought I'd ever be doing.
So what did you go to school for in college?
I actually didn't go to college. I ended up, after graduation, went straight into working. But all of my education was leading in the graphics and like graphic design, visual communications background. I did a little bit of time at HTC, and
Did you now?
yeah, back in the day. And funny enough, like I started college classes before I graduated high school, but it was all in the like arts world. It was photography and sculpture and fine arts and all that kind of stuff. And then somewhere I flipped it and was like, you know what? I don't know if it was like, you're not going to make any money doing this, or if I have no idea, change of heart. But I was like, I'm going into pharmaceuticals. And like, I spent a semester starting to try to work through changing everything over to, pharmaceutical degree. And then just, life took over and I started working more, and that's just where I went. I got married young, and then it was like, all right, we had to like pay for rent and food and cars and all that kind of stuff. So ended up going into working more than anything else.
So then fast forward, last year is when you bought CrossFit Catonsville, right?
Yep. 2019, specifically in January. We took over officially February 2nd.
And what do you like about this community?
Honestly, this community is a little bit different. I like it's small. The gym is a 5,000 square foot space. It's teetered around 110, 120 members, which is really nice. When we were looking to open a gym, we talked about staying at 150 or under. absolute max 200. So I like the smaller feel. I like the smaller, I think there's value in that. I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think there's the ability to kind of have those relationships with people. And it's easier when it is smaller to be involved and be able to know who each person is and that kind of stuff. So there's that. It's a smaller community and I really do enjoy it. And there's not really space to enlarge it past that 150 mark. I think it'd be a great sweet spot. But two, it's a little bit different. The previous owner didn't set it up like your quintessential CrossFit box. When we took over, nobody knew who Rich Froning was. Nobody knows who Dave Castro is. Nobody, they didn't follow the sport of CrossFit. They didn't, there was a lot of things happening in the gym, but even, there's a smaller set of the community that did. Obviously there are people who did know who these individuals and athletes were, but as a greater whole, most of these people didn't, they weren't doing it because they saw it as a sport on TV. They were looking for a gym and they liked the methodology. They liked what was going on, and that's why they were here. And then they were really, luckily, extremely welcoming to Lauren and myself when we took over, and they were willing to give us the chance to show ourselves, improve ourselves. And yeah, I think it's been really nice. It's nice being able to, even though the CrossFit Catonsville name and gym has been around for 6 years now, it became a completely different beast last year. And I think everybody, recognizes it, and it's almost like it's been reborn, but everyone's stuck around and they're all, they're doing great.
Yeah, I really have loved being there. It's been almost a year now for me.
Yeah, it's getting close.
It's been great, and like you said, the community's so welcoming. But here we are, 3.5 months into quarantine, and everybody's been sort of separated and doing their own thing, and everybody's coming back together. Well, most people are coming back together in the gym.
Yeah, and I'm not laughing at that. It's just so much is different. The new norm is not what we know, and we have people who are at varying comfort levels, and it's totally okay.
So what are you telling the folks in the community about coming back, like advice? Because we had talked about this earlier, that this coming back to the gym is sort of happening all over the country, and it's kind of like we're all coming back from injury. So how do we navigate, going back in? Even the folks who've been working out at home, it's still been different.
Yeah. So funny enough, ironically, it's like coming back from an injury, except everybody is coming back from 3 months of rest. So all their injuries are gone.
Right.
Everybody who left here, with shoulder issues, knee problems, back aches, are like, I feel great. I'm like, yeah, that's, you rested. You gave your body a chance to heal. But in general, during this whole pandemic, we offered Zoom classes and we did daily programming. And we had a good following of people who were attending those classes. But like you said, it's just a little bit different. Even if you're on a Zoom class together, it's not the same as being side by side. And so the intensity level is much less, right? So movements generally about the same. They're just, instead of a barbell, most people had dumbbells or kettlebells. So on one hand, they actually benefited because they did more work. We did a lot more like isometric stuff, and they had the ability to kind of work more on things that were gonna to work on keeping themselves healthier. But they just didn't have the same level of intensity that you generally have when you're in the box. And so mostly what I've been telling people, and this is what I posted out to the group as a whole, besides where each person is individually, is, and this is a rule of thumb. I don't know where I got this rule of thumb. I can't honestly tell you where I picked it up. I'm sure I picked it up somewhere. There's no way I'm smart enough to think of this myself. But I generally like to tell people, that it takes about a day for every week that you've been out for your body to kind of get back into the swing of things, and that's the asterisk on that is about a day, a workout and your normal consistent routine, right? So in the case of the last 3 months, we're looking at 12, roughly 12 weeks, 12 days of working out is what I've been telling people to kind of give themselves before they can start to be critical of their performance.
Mm-hmm.
I think people will do whatever it is that they're going to want to do, or they're going to do their best to kind of push the envelope as far as they can under a coach's eye. But it's the mentality behind it. It's the feeling like they're not doing enough, or they've lost too much strength, or they're not moving as fast as they used to. And so what I generally am telling people is to, be patient, slowly come back in. First and foremost, come back and just go light and have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was the fun that brought you in here in the first place. So many people get caught up in their numbers and their performance that they forget the actual aspect that this was fun. There's a lot of fun to this that, is still here. But at some point we all just get too serious and we lose that. So it was like, one, come back and enjoy the fun. You've been isolated by yourself for so long. Just enjoy the fact that you're now here. On our transition back, it was slow and very deliberate. And so we didn't come directly back into the box. We went and we had outdoor WODs. So, we had the ability to be outside, have space between us, and be able to get workouts in. Still a little altered, but now we were including more barbell stuff, that most of our members just didn't have at home. Most of our members don't have garage gyms packed full of equipment, so they were able to kind of come back working outside safely and starting to use barbells and things like that they didn't necessarily have at home. So that was a little bit of that transition of like, it's limited anyways. We're not going to be doing Fran out of the gate because I'm not bringing you inside to do pull-ups. So just
Right.
give it a chance. We'll do some body row stuff. We got some bent over rows. So we were also able, I think, to effectively kind of control some of those people who would have come back and just gone crazy right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
But I did. I mean, even after saying, give yourself time, give yourself about a day for every week you've been out, for a couple of different reasons, to avoid injury, but two, to keep positive about the thought process, because so many people quickly were just like, I can't move the bar like I used to. I'm not doing what I used to. And it's like, stop comparing yourself. One of the beautiful things is, unlike an injury, we are in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. We've all been out for 3 months. So, I always tell people not to compare themselves to anybody anyways, but even now more than ever, it's like, you have no idea what you guys have been separated for 3 months. You have no idea what this person to the left of you or this person to the right of you has been doing. So you cannot compare yourself. You just have to listen to your body. And,
You can't even compare yourself to yourself.
no, because
I feel like that's like the worst comparison. It's like, well, I mean, I used to be able to do this. Yeah, but have you ever been cooped up in your house for 4 months?
yeah, it's comparing yourself to yourself that actually gets you injured.
Yeah.
You're less likely to get yourself injured trying to compare yourself to somebody else, because you'll reach a point in your head where you're like, oh, I just can't do that. And you kind of acknowledge the fact that this person might be better. But if it's something that you used to be able to do, you'll push yourself to a point of danger, because at some point in time you did do it. And that's what gets scary. That's where you end up with problems, because you get caught up in that. You get caught up in competing with yourself. So yeah, I think generally I tell people, give it a day, a workout for every day or every week that they've been out, and in their normal routine. So if they're a Monday, Wednesday, Friday person, then it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, not 12 days back to back and try to
Right.
cram it all in. It's like, that's just going to lead to injury as well. But I always end it with, you just can't be critical of yourself until you've at least passed that milestone. You get to your 12th, standard consecutive workout, day, then you probably have put a good base back in place to then start to feel like you should or you could move a little bit harder, move a little bit faster. But the beauty of it is, by that point, they're all back to it anyways. Most of our athletes, most of any gym's athletes, just we're go-getters. We're in this world because we like to challenge ourselves and we like to push ourselves, and it's really hard to tell ourselves to back off and gradually let things happen. So I think that's just part of it, is by giving them that little rule of thumb, it just at least gives them a little bit of patience. And maybe they won't make it 12 straight days, but maybe they'll get 7 in. And that's already 7 like more paced out, controlled, well thought out days than it would have been if we didn't say anything at all. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, this podcast is sort of directed at masters athletes, 35 plus. And so
that's me.
That's you. Yes. Yeah. That's me too.
Not like
as masters as me.
No, I'm 42.
Yeah. So, and I know we have older folks in CrossFit Catonsville. And so when you see these folks, like your parents are there, right? Yeah. Both of them. What's your advice to those folks coming back as well?
It's the same. It's almost the same. It's just a difference in degree. That's all. It's not, it's kind of knowing, and this is one of the beautiful things with a smaller gym. I kind of know where everybody was. Not that I control where everybody was, but I'm either around enough to see what they're doing or what they have been doing, or working directly with them enough to know that where they were when they left off. But yeah, I mean, just even case in point, you brought up my parents. Neither of them did. Apparently I had to buy a gym for them to decide that they wanted to do it, that they believed it was legit enough to do it. Because I've tried for years to get them to come to the gyms I've worked at, and they never did. But they've been consistent. But recently, they're asking it. So I guess there's 2 ways to answer that question. One is from my mother's perspective. She never stopped. So she was one of those that was consistent on the Zoom classes. Mm-hmm. She had a pair of light dumbbells. She had a kettlebell. She never did all the movements completely to full range, but she did to her full range, and she keeps working on it. But we've had a good, almost a full year of a base to take her into this Zoom sessions with. So she wasn't like brand new and then all of a sudden had to figure things out on her own over a camera. She knew the majority of the movements we were doing, and she knew what we were looking for. At least she understood the cues I was calling out. But she was consistent. She every Tuesday, Thursday, she logged into Zoom. And then every day that we had our yoga online, she did yoga. So she was really good about balancing out the mobility and the rest aspect of it with the intensity and the exercise aspect. And so she's done really well. And she's come back in, and it's like she hasn't missed a step. Yeah, she's using lighter weight, but she was never using extremely heavy weight to begin with. So you're just kind of touching back on form. That's what most of these people, regardless of the age, form is the biggest thing right now that we're drilling home. We've intentionally programmed the weights lower and lighter, but programmed in the movements so that we're working through full ranges of motions and kind of reminding people what we're looking for. So it really hasn't been a tough transition for my mom. My dad, on the other hand, he's hot and cold. So wasn't doing a lot before we went into the pandemic. Not sure what he's been doing right now during the pandemic, but he just hit me up the other day, get Nancy to get back. And so with him, I kind of just start a little more basic. And usually with all of our senior athletes, I start with the core, just what it's like to be able to breathe properly, what it's like to actually engage the core properly. We do a lot of core work with them from the get-go, and working on how it translates into them squatting and even walking, And then we go from there. So depending on how well they're doing with the exercises when they get back in that are correlated. And I mean correlated, like we might be doing, you know, suitcase carries or things like that. Like they're not on the ground doing V-ups. They're, you know, they're doing some,
Yeah.
you know, static planks or, you know, some like all of it incline, like incline bird dogs or just something that's kind of working on helping them understand, you know, how to lock in that midline. And usually they do pretty good. It's hard once you learn it. I think it's hard to lose it in this short amount of time. But I think what's interesting because of all that we are learning and nowadays, you know, people like my parents never learned the stuff we have learned, you know? So the idea of teaching them how to stabilize that, there's just, it's brand new to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because it seems, you know, for us, it seems like it's second nature, but you have, you know, my parents between 67 and 75 years old, like, no, that was never something that was ever, you know, taught or elaborated to them in the worlds that they were in. Maybe if, you know, if somebody's parent was like a professional athlete or something, it might have been a little bit different, but my parents weren't. They were just average Joes.
Yeah, I love seeing them in the gym. I've missed seeing them in the gym. They're so much fun.
They just,
There's
you know, it's social hour for them. They're not very sociable people. That's the other thing I kind of really like about having them around is they're not social people. I didn't grow up with my parents having like large groups of friends or having those like long term friends that, you know, saw every couple months or things like that. Like we were from a big family, so you know, we were always seeing our families and stuff though. But it's coming in here. My dad acts like he knows everybody. You know, everyone. It's so funny because they have, you know, I think what they were so intimidated by for so long, they find comfort now. They
Mhm.
find a sense of belonging, and they find this safe space that to them was so scary for so long, you know. And so now they look forward to getting in here because my dad can goof around when he's walking in. You know, he's all about the show. Um, and my mom I think my mom secretly really does love doing things she didn't think was possible,
Mhm.
you know? Um, and it's fun to watch her. And sometimes I have to stop her because I have realized there's a little bit of a competitiveness there where it's like, no, I'm going to get this. It's like, no. We've reached, that's our limit today. Let's see. There's no point in trying to get another 5 pounds for the sake of, you know, rounding out that number. So it is funny to see that little side of her come out.
Yeah, but then that a little bit of everybody.
Yeah. I never thought my mom of all people would have it in her.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. But outside of them, you know, a large part of our demographic, I say a large part, but I mean, again, we're not a large gym, but we've easily got a handful of people who are, you know, 45, 50 plus, and they mix it up in all sorts of ways. We scale, modify as necessary. You know, we take into account all the past injuries or things that are happening, and we do our best to try to work in, you know, mobility work and things like that might help just ages of tightness or poor movement. But, you know, for the most part, it's just, I think that's one of the things, touching back on your question about you know, enjoying or what do I enjoy or the community here is there's nobody, I don't want to say nobody cares in the sense nobody cares, but I feel like there's nobody's too big for themselves. Everybody really does just care about each other being here.
Hmm.
And so like it looks down on anybody else regarding what they're able or not able to do. They're all so supportive when it comes to, especially seeing, you know, somebody struggling. Who doesn't love to try to cheer somebody through a struggle, you
Yeah.
know? You know, I think the biggest thing is, you know, I think everybody's just getting, I think, more and more aware that, you know, the number one thing for us is being able to move correctly. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not pushing the heaviest weights or the fastest times. I'd rather see you move correctly. Because ultimately, you know, such a small percentage of any CrossFit communities, athletes would be considering themselves, you know, an athlete from the sports side.
Yeah.
You know, everybody here is just trying to ensure that they live a little bit longer and
Mhm.
happier, you know? So it's that whole, you know, I talk to all of them when they're coming in, but it's like, what's the point? Is the point to move the most weight possible, or to move the most weight possible as efficiently and as safely as possible, you know? Because that's what's going to translate to stepping out of here and enjoying your life, or going home and feeling like you got to sit in the Epsom salt bath and throw your complex on and then hide in your house all weekend because you're hurt.
Right.
You know, why do that? I love some of my favorite athletes in the CrossFit sport is all the masters,
Yeah.
especially still at this point in time, because when you look at these athletes at the games that are, you know, 55, 60, 65, you know, they didn't grow up doing this stuff.
Hmm.
You know, even at, you know, maybe the most fortunate of those competitors might have been, you know, in California at the birth of CrossFit. So they're talking between 15 and 20 years of experience. But that still takes, you know, your 65-year-old athlete and makes them 40 plus before they ever even started this. But that's probably pretty rare. Most of these athletes in those age categories probably started this when they were past 50. And I love that. I love looking at those athletes and thinking like, yep, I want to be like them.
And
And
they're
then when
probably working full time while they're
yeah,
training.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we all are really. If you were lucky enough to use the sport itself as your full time, you're in a different boat anyways.
Yeah.
You know, you're doing different things, but I mean, it's even some of that. I will use those examples when talking to um, masters athletes, and it's just like, you know, when you pick an athlete out, because we have a TV screen here at the gym that usually I will, well, back in the day when everything was, you know, quote unquote normal, you know, we would have past games or different sorts of, you know, CrossFit related material constantly showing on it when, you know, people were waiting to start class or finishing up class. And around certain times of the day, we obviously have a higher population of masters athletes at certain hours than we do at other hours. So I would almost pick and choose what I put on based on, you know, what that average population was. And so when I knew that was a heavier masters crowd, I would throw, you know, 2016 or 2017 games on, you know, with the masters
Hmm.
that were actually broadcasts. And it's funny to watch their faces. And then
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's, you know, she probably started doing that 6 years ago,
Hmm.
you know, at whatever age you are right now. Like, this is all possible. It's just consistency and just spend time here.
So speaking of the games, you know, they're postponed to September 14th now.
I heard. I
So,
don't know if I have an opinion on that though. I would say I'm personally one. I don't, and I'm not going to make any assumptions. I'm not going to separate myself from anybody either. I guess I should say that me personally, I am one of those individuals that really loves the CrossFit health
mhm.
side of CrossFit as opposed to CrossFit the sport. I think the sport is very fun. I watch it every year, get involved in it. I enjoy that, but I don't necessarily use the sport as like as a selling point or a marketing point for our members. I love the health side
So is
because
any go ahead.
no,
Go
no,
ahead.
I'm sorry.
So because they put out videos now from CrossFit Health, and they usually like modified workouts, you know, in the living room. But is there anything you'd like to see more of coming out of CrossFit Health?
Well, I don't know. We may be going down a different rabbit hole than we want to go down right now because there's a whole lot of stuff in the CrossFit world that I think is going to be different and change.
Well, let me
And
put it this way. Is there something that you think would be helpful to your athletes, like wish list?
no, I not per se, because I think that's one of the things, especially now that we've all learned, is that CrossFit HQ is a great resource,
Hmm.
but they're not the ones that are directly influencing or teaching our members. That's
Right.
me. So there's, I like to look and constantly educate myself on stuff that they're putting out there, but there's so many things out there, so it's, I go and try to pull in as much as I can from several different resources. So I don't necessarily think that there was anything that they might've been short on anything or missing anything that I would have preferred them to put out for us. I just really love the fact that there's so much benefit from just a healthy lifestyle than just the sport aspect of it.
Hmm.
So, the games, I never set my clock by them. I would look and it's like, oh, the games are on. And yeah, it's a little bit different when you become an owner. And I was, like I knew when the games were going to be here or there. But again, it's a different world. Our members don't follow the games like many members do in many of the boxes around the area. So I put the games on and people were, well, even this year, I would put sanctionals on every weekend that they were on. I would stream them that following week. Whatever weekend they were on, the next week, I would stream that sanctional like all week through all the classes on the TV and the waiting room or the waiting area. And 90% of the people were like, is this happening right now? What is this? And that's not a knock or anything like that, but it's just, there's so little care for the sports side of it from this membership. And I don't know, I think we're in a different boat because we acquired a community versus building one from the ground up out of a box that we started fresh. So we did have to adjust our expectations and our priorities based on that. But I don't think it's been a bad thing. I actually enjoy the fact that I might have, if given, left to my own resources, may have tried to create one of those, sport heavy, boxes and missed the opportunity to make the space a little more available and approachable to more of our senior athletes and our masters athletes. And even to that point, we have a lot of we've got kids classes and things like that. The parents to those kids are not in here throwing around heavy weights. They're members that just are looking to get a good burn on and then they bring their kids in. So I think like if we had a different style box and it was real sport heavy, we might have missed out on all that.
Yeah.
But you don't know. It's a what if game.
No, I can appreciate that because it does sort of add to the atmosphere when that layer of sport is taken away. Because I think you can really just focus on being fit for life versus the goal of, hey, I want to go to the games. I mean, most of us aren't going to the games as anything other than spectators.
Mm-hmm. And even that went.
We can't do that this year. Not this year.
Yeah, right. And I think that's, for me, whenever I talk to an athlete, it's always from that perspective of like, and I've done this for the longest time. I would say this, not even just from owning the gym, but as a coach in previous gyms, I'd always say that the average person, the benefit that they gained from CrossFit was learning how to move properly, not being able to lift their body weight over their head. Like they're going out and they're taking what they've learned on how to lift, how to keep themselves safe. And they're using it when they're playing with their kids or grandkids and gardening and just housework and all other stuff where, sadly, that's usually where you hear all the injuries come from when we're talking about aging. And, it's all like the most mundane. I mean, crap. I mean, even myself, I'm 42 and I've got aches and pains that I'm like, I don't know where that came from. Mm-hmm. Or I just, doing something super random and mundane and I all of a sudden tweak my back. Like it's just, nowadays when that happens though, I can almost immediately go, oh, dummy. Like I know exactly what I did wrong, but a lot of our athletes don't. They're like, I did this and I don't know why, or this hurts now and I don't know why. And it's so, you're kind of like trying to figure out what'd you do, how we twist, how'd you lift, what'd you, but I think as we're getting these new masters and seniors athletes. I think it's been a lot easier. And I think they've been more accepting because when I speak to them about all these movements we're doing, I try to relate it to just normal everyday things, reaching up to a high cabinet or having to put something away in a high cabinet or, just the normal everyday stuff.
Moving your friend's furniture.
We're all
I
over
get
40. Nobody should be, or even over 35. Nobody should be
I
friend's furniture.
I keep getting calls where people want me to help them move now.
Are your friends all 18?
No, they're all like older than me. So
No, I joke, but I definitely, yeah, I don't know. I've reached a point where I like, if we move again, and it might be because since moving into our house, we've had 2 kids and accumulated a whole lot more stuff that we don't need. But I'll figure out a way. I'll sell my blood, but I'm gonna hire a moving company. I'm not doing it myself anymore.
yeah, I don't blame you. So I want to be respectful of your time, but I do have some rapid fire questions that I didn't tell you about.
Nope, I'm okay with that. Are we good? I can talk all day. You know me.
I know you.
I'll ramble on. Let's go. What else we got? You want to talk about cars? I don't know anything about cars. We can talk about cars.
I don't know anything about cars
Good.
either.
Let's make
My
it up.
car is black. That's all I know.
Mine has a steering wheel. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh. All right. So are you ready? You ready?
What
I
is it?
think I
Wait,
know that it's
are there
rapid fire
parameters?
questions.
Right, okay, all right. I've never done this. Is it?
All
Are there
right. It's
rules?
just say the first thing that comes in your mind.
Okay. See, I was gonna think about it. Seeing when you said that.
I mean, you can, but don't try to
Oh my
impress
God.
me because I know you.
Is it?
You ready?
All right. I'm gonna do my best then.
All right. Hot or iced coffee?
Hot.
Clean and jerks or snatches?
Snatch.
Favorite benchmark or hero wad?
Did I say none of the above?
That is a perfectly acceptable answer. That's a perfectly acceptable answer.
But no, I don't. I mean, I like. Oddly enough, I've played around with Linda a lot. I say a lot, but I mean more than probably any of the other benchmarks.
Linda's
There's
still
just
what I want to do.
something about it. It takes a lot of time though.
I want to do regionals, Linda, just because I would have to lose some weight before I do real Linda.
But to your point though, I do enjoy the fact that it's completely tied into that. Like it's,
Yeah.
so yeah. But no, I always joke that I like to run my mouth. I don't like to rub my body. So I try to hide from workouts, but it's going well. I guess, I would say Linda and then probably, Isabel, just because of snatches. I really do like,
Yeah.
I feel comfortable in that overhead position. I like it.
Yeah. So that's probably going to answer the next question. Most favorite movement?
We'll go with snatch because it includes the overhead squat.
Okay.
I don't want to be like, oh, overhead squat is its own movement. I know it's part of the snatch, and so we're going to go with the snatch as as an Olympic movement.
Mhm.
So being able to get, I love the way it looks. I love the way it feels. I love watching other people do it. This, like, if you can catch the snatch in the bottom of that squat, and you got that pause. You show control. It just looks so good.
I still remember all of the drills you made me do.
Oh yeah. And
I'm
that's
getting ready for the Olympic lifting meet.
Yep. And they worked. And they're good.
They
And
did.
I love them.
Least favorite movement, and I think I know what the answer is.
They're tied for wall ball and thruster.
Yep.
Even today we just did running Karen, and actually the wall ball wasn't too bad. I might have to say it's 100% the thruster.
Yeah. Which is funny because outside of the snatch, I probably love the thruster next. Well, no. Clean
You
and jerk.
do?
Clean and jerk and then thruster. Thruster's number 3 on my list.
Ugh.
Yeah. What are you watching on Netflix?
You also own an assault bike, so I don't care. There's already something wrong with you. You purposely went out.
Listen, I did
bought an assault bike.
not buy an assault bike. I won an assault bike.
Who puts their name into that raffle? Why did you even voluntarily try to win one?
I was at regionals. I was
That's
caught
just,
up in things.
that's just,
I was caught up in the glow of
you know what
regionals.
I'd really love is a way to hurt myself a lot at home.
Uh,
Not be able to breathe. Sorry, what am I watching now on Netflix? We
don't
go
say
back and
Tiger King.
no,
Please don't say
we go back and forth. Right now we kind of like jump between 3 shows. Lauren loves New Girl, so I'll tolerate New Girl. We'll do like an episode of New Girl. I'll
Mhm.
feed in an episode of hashtag Black AF. If you've
Oh
not
yeah,
seen that yet,
I've seen a couple of episodes of that. It's
and
kind of the R rated version of Blackish.
well, yeah, exactly.
Well, the guy who's
Um,
in it,
yes,
he writes Blackish.
that the whole basis is that
Yeah.
it's like kind of a behind the scenes of his life of creating Blackish, and his daughter's doing a documentary to get into film school.
Mhm.
So it's kind of showing his behind the scenes world of all that. But yeah, we've enjoyed that, and then Space Force
Oh,
with
I haven't seen that
Carell.
yet. That keeps popping
It's
up. That
it's
keeps popping
kooky.
up.
It's weird. I don't want to say big fan, but I definitely like John Malkovich, and he just typically plays a weirdo in that show. So
Mhm.
it appeals to me.
And the last question.
These aren't enough. I want more. Come on.
You want more?
Yeah, let's go.
I don't know what
I'll
else to
make up
ask
my
you.
own. Give me the last one.
No,
The
no.
last
Oh,
one.
okay. I'll ask you another one before I ask you the last question. What's your favorite memory of us together in the gym?
Wow, I refuse to answer that because I know you want me to so bad. That's such a
Really? Really?
what setup question is that? Tell me what you like about me.
All right. You're not going to tell me?
All right, I'm not going to tell you, but I will pull out a really fun obscure memory that for some reason never leaves. I
Please
just
don't let it be
remember
about pistols.
it wasn't. I remember for some reason like I always think about when you were training for a particular adventure race and you set up literally a spear throwing
Yes.
practice in the gym. You had a broomstick with a tennis ball duct taped to the front of it. You were throwing it at a target. I'm like, is this happening right now?
I just had it set up. I had a wall ball set up on a GHD and I marked out like
Yes.
20 feet and I
Yep.
practiced and I got the spear throw
You were
on the day of the
practicing
race.
spear throwing. It's like, okay.
I wasn't playing.
All right. But it always made me laugh. I was like, practice spear throwing.
All right. So for real, the last question, because I don't think we can top that one. What's one thing you think would improve your own fitness right now?
Consistency. I am so easily able to talk myself out of doing a workout. And I hide behind being an owner to do that. It's like all of a sudden it's like I can figure out something I need to do for the gym that's pressing and needs my time versus like trying to hit a workout here, hit a workout there. So I think, you can always learn, you can always work on things. And I grew up through this. I say grew up, like I feel like I grew up here in CrossFit, but it's only been almost 10 years. I always focused on form and technique, and that was always the base of all my stuff. So I feel like I move really well, and I can always move better, but it's never about like, oh, I need more mobility or I need to work on more of this or that. I need to just stop hiding behind the fact that I'm running the gym and remember that like I love being a part of the gym because of the workouts and just that feeling of laying on the floor, and then getting back up and then like 10 minutes later, be like, okay, I'm all right.
Yeah.
But it's just easy. I reached a point when we started having the kids and stuff, I kind of went into like just management mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped pushing myself as hard as I used to. And then I got real complacent, just it was like, it'll stick. I'll come back to it. So I've been better now that we are actually back in the gym, like kind of focusing on hitting 3 days and being smart about it. Like just 'cause I was trying to practice what I preach, and just like because I was doing RX at one point doesn't mean that that's where I am right now. And so even though I might write RX up for our athletes at one thing, I will do it at a lighter weight for two reasons. One, my own health and safety and just sanity. And two, to kind of show our athletes too that just because it's written to one level doesn't mean we all have to do it. It's okay to modify.
Yeah, I think that's a good example for coaches to set. Just knowing where you are and just going to that level. But I know it's hard because you also want to be like a role model.
Yeah.
But that might be the best way to role model being where you are.
And that's a little bit of like practice what you preach. The last coaches meeting, I reiterated to our coaches because we were getting back into the idea. We were getting back to the in-person classes. It was like, I don't need you to be the fastest or strongest athlete in the gym. And I will say, I stole this from Gio back at CrossFit Fed Hill when I started out there and knew a couple of coaches. I don't need you to be the fastest or strongest or athlete in the gym. I need you to be the best mover.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you come in last, if your overhead squats are beautiful, who cares? Because the athletes are looking at you for what they can get away with in their movements. They're not necessarily looking at you to tell if they need to go faster or slower, maybe a little bit. But the most important thing is they're looking to see like, what can they get away with? How are you moving? So how can they move?
Mm-hmm.
So the cleaner and the more virtuous that your movements, just the more important.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate you spending some time with me, and I hope that sometime in the near future I get to see you in person.
Yeah, we'll see.
I haven't seen you,
I know it's only been
like a month?
months.
Well, I saw you the one day when we did outside. We did outside. I did DT outside.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But
Gotcha.
hopefully I get to see you in person sometime in 2020.
Hey, don't push it. We've got 6 months left. There's a good chance.
6 months left.
It's a good chance. It's been a weird one.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Trying to look through our little notes and make sure we touch base on everything. I just want to give you as much as you need. More rapid fire questions? Okay. I've got 9 chickens.
You have 9 now?
Yeah, 9 chickens. Got a little garden, little farm going.
How many?
20,
you got like
20 tomato plants.
How many dogs now?
2 dogs.
2 dogs.
I have 1 dog. My wife has a dog. My dog's great. My wife's dog's a pain in the butt. And
you have 2 kids.
Yes, I
on
have
top
one.
Of that, you have 1, and
my wife has 1.
Your wife has 1.
Yeah, they both came from my wife and me, but I choose. Like I picked my daughter, she picked our son, and that's just how we roll.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense.
Yep, totally.
All right, my friend.
All right. I'll let you go.
All right. It was great talking to you.
You too. Thanks, Julie.